How you doing? Captain Brian Arena, Salty Dog Fishing Charters. Today we're going to go over the basic maintenance of a spinning reel. Okay, so the easiest way to maintain your spinning reels, you're just going to need a couple of screwdrivers, different sizes, Phillips, maybe a flathead, if you can, smallest possible is perfect. A little bit of reel grease, oil. If you're using braided line, some kind of pliers that cuts it. It's always good to have nail clippers, sometimes that works best. Have them all on hand just in case. You never know what you're going to need. First thing I like to do, start separating things as far as taking the spool off, loosen up the drag knob, pull the spool apart. Looks fairly clean, but we're still going to give everything a quick little rinse down. Right, start one piece at a time. I like to start with the top knob first. Then the spool. Just use slightly warm water. You don't want it too hot, don't want it cold. Now the actual reel, open your bail up. You're cleaning off any kind of grit and any kind of grease that you already have on there. You're just loosening it up because you're going to be putting new grease on. Make sure you dry the reel off as best as you can. You don't want the moisture when you open it up to get in there. That's the whole point of the grease, is to protect from that, but why start off behind the 8-ball? Turn it upside down, turn it a little bit just in case anything got in. Okay, looks fairly dry to me. Start off by removing the handle. Put that off to the side. Reels have a little plate down here. It's either a plastic or a thin metal piece. This will actually hold a couple of retaining screws that you're going to have to get to. So just remove it. This little plate will come off. And that's the screw that I was talking about there. I like to remove that one first, just so you're doing everything in reverse. Okay, now you can start removing the other screws. Okay, so now we're going to remove the side plate. And we're going to inspect. At this time I like to reinstall the handle so that this way you can move all the gears and see what it all looks like. See if everything's moving properly, everything's all lubricated. Okay, this reel is definitely dry and needs a good amount of grease. Take the handle back off. Brought it apart. I inspected it. As you can see, these teeth are ground down. It's going to give you grinding action. You're going to turn, and the reel is just going to engage and disengage. So we're going to replace this gear. I always order a whole bunch, and because this is a common issue when you beat the crap out of your equipment like we do in charter businesses. We're going to just start picking away at all the old grease. Okay, so you could always go and disassemble this further than this, but I never really find it necessary unless you find parts that are broken. All my gears I've inspected. This gear down here, it's got all its teeth. This up here has all its teeth. All the retaining clips are fine. This bearing is nice and still greased. I will just put a little bit more in there using a Q-tip or a toothpick, whichever you feel more comfortable using. Just lay it on there. Spread it around. You could spin the bearing. Okay, now we're going to grease the bottom one. No need to put huge globs of grease on it. The more grease you have, the more it's just going to pick up any kind of sediment or dirt that potentially gets in here, since these aren't sealed reels. You just want enough to coat the gears and lubricate them so they don't bind up. The reason why I had a gear failure on this is customers will battle against the drag system as they're fighting a fish, and that just eats up the gears. So, another topic, let your system work for you. If a fish is pulling, don't reel. You start reeling once the fish stops. Let the rod do the work for you. Don't overwork it. You'll just blow up your gears and create more problems for yourself. Okay, and now we are going to do the new gear that we're going to install. Just keep spreading. Okay, so now that we have grease on all the components, now it's a matter of just smoothing it out with your fingers. Make sure it gets all in there. Okay, we're going to do the same on the top. And then you'll see if you need to reapply, which we're going to have to on the main gear. This pinion gear looks fine. Okay. So now that we're all re-greased, reinstall. Okay, now it's all installed. I'm going to put back the knob just to give it a little test. Much smoother sound to it. And now we can check the bottom gear, make sure that's greased well, which it is. I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit. Everything looks good. Okay, now we're going to start putting everything back. Exact opposite of the way we put it on. So, side plates on. No need to tighten everything down super tight right now, just get them in there. Now we could start tightening them down. I like to do a cross pattern. This one first, the opposite one next to it, and finally the last one that hides underneath that plate. Go through it one more time in the same pattern. Make sure everything's snug. Okay, we're going to put this bottom plate on last, just in case we feel that we need to go back in there. It's one less thing to take. Now I will take a little bit of oil. Just a little bit on the outside part of the bearings. Very small, liberal amount. Seal that piece back up. And we're going to do the same thing on the other bearing. 1 drop, 2 drops, 3, more than enough. Reinstall our handle. Thousand times smoother than when we took it apart. Now we're going to take the top gear off. This is the gear for your clicker. Just turn it upside down. 1 drop. Rotate it around and give it another spin. Perfect. Wipe off the excess. Back to the grease. Grease off your spool shaft. Both sides. Make sure you get it on the threads. You don't need a lot of grease for this. Use your fingers to work it around. Reinstall your clicker star. Any washers that you had so your spool lines up correctly. Reinstall your spool. One little drop of oil just to give it a little protection. Smear it around. Put back your drag knob. Spin it again. Okay, so now we're going to install the last piece here. Let's put it on. Tiny little screw. Probably drop it like usual. That's that.